It's a beautiful bacon day, Cookie Crusaders. Today I wanted to come and talk to you guys about the recommended toppings for the cookies that are stirring up the meta and the arena and a few other game modes. And that's going to be mushroom cookie and pomegranate cookie. The new ones that I'm investing into because the teams that I've shown you that are fun and what I've been seeing in the arena a lot. So they're ones that are definitely going to be on people's radar and I think should be covered. So we're going to start with mushroom cookie. So the new skill, we're going to read it out, plants mushrooms that release purple poison clouds around themselves. Poisoned enemies become disoriented and suffer from a debuff reducing healing. So this is just like Pom Pom doing the healing debuff. But poison mushroom cookie claims that was never the intention. Poison clouds deal extra poison damage to monsters and bosses. So this is important because that's not something it used to do before. So this is something that we're still going to be testing for guild battle because mushroom cookie was a used cookie in guild battle before, and this means that since it does extra damage to bosses and monsters, that means it's going to be potentially a re-evaluation that this cookie could be back in guild battle for the people that used to use him. And so, as you can see, something that was not there before, extra damage to regular enemies, 80%. This is going to be important in things like Alliance mode and maybe even in player versus environment. And then extra damage to bosses, obviously it has to be a boss for this to qualify, will be 120%. So this is awesome because if you add those together, that's 247% to bosses and about 207% to regular enemies. And that's really good. I do not think it stacks with the poison damage every second over 10 seconds. I could be wrong, but I will test that more. But the healing of negative 15%, that's really nice. That is a really helpful thing, because if we go compare Pumpkin Pie's healing debuff, we can see down here, healing received is negative 70% for 3 seconds, but what it does not say for Poison Mushroom is a time limitation for the healing on him. So 3 seconds is important, and the 70% healing debuff is powerful from Pom Pom, but the healing subtraction debuff here, it doesn't say when. Now, my assumption would be it would be the 10 seconds that is the poison damage happening, because that's the poison cloud and how long it's being effective. And if it's not, if it doesn't have a time, that means the only way to get rid of the healing debuff is to dispel it completely, which Herb Cookie and the Monocle and a couple other options can do so. So that's interesting to know and something interesting to figure out, but that is the newer updates with Mushroom Cookie. Now, what I think is going to be important here is the way the toppings are designed for Mushroom Cookie. One thing I've definitely confirmed is that critical toppings do not work with poison characters. Poison damage is a side section of them, so what they're doing is not directly using their own damage to create the poison. It's its own like entity in a sort. And so for that reason, it is not taking critical factor in at all. I've tried it with Affogato, I tried it with Poison, I just can't seem to get critical hits to even come up. So Apple Jelly is not going to be a recommendation for either of the Poison characters for that main reason. Now the other thing is, the attack speed is interesting because attack speed can kind of make specific important things happen for certain cookies. Caramel Arrow will be one of them, and someone I'm going to cover. But in this instance, I don't really think attack speed is going to make a huge difference for Poison Mushroom Cookie because the animation's already pretty quick. So I don't think that there would be much benefit. And there's some times when you add attack speed to a cookie that they actually lose some of their power capability because certain cookies are invulnerable or irresisted to specific attacks and skills that are happening on the battlefield during their animations. If you speed up those animations with attack speed, that means they're invulnerable for a less amount of time or irresisted for a less amount of time. So that's something to keep in consideration. So something I do want to adjust on Poison Mushroom is I want to remove the crit percent, I want to remove the attack speed percent, and I want to get those focused in another area. This was just what I could build for him right now. HP is okay, but you can see it's an okay base HP. I think really the three biggest focus that you can use for Poison Mushroom to just get the most out of the cookie is either attack, damage resist, and cooldown. And as you can see, I don't have any of those on here except attack because I just couldn't get the toppings for it. But that is the recommendation. And if you can't put all of your stats into one section, maybe it's a little tough, don't feel bad about getting crit resist. Here's why. As the meta is changing and as the toppings are changing, as things are evolving more, crit resist is going to be important because your damage resist is going to work at the base level of damage, but that is not going to completely cover the critical hits that will start to be coming through. And if you've seen the new meta team, the Scythe is part of the new meta, and that means critical hits are a big focus. So you might want critical resistance on there so that can lower the amount of massive damage coming from quick and powerful DPS units. And so that would be something I would say dole a little bit of your resources into, but mostly focus on that attack and cooldown. Those are going to be the most important ones. And then kind of divvy between your damage resistance and your crit resistances. So that's Mushroom Cookie. Now we're going to go over to Pomegranate and her differences. So I'm going to read the whole skill. Even dark spells can become a formidable ally. The cookie's Crimson Magic applies a buff restoring some HP over time for the whole squad and increases their damage, healing 28.7% of Pomegranate's attack every 1 second over 5 seconds, and then a 30% attack buff for 7 seconds. Now, there's a few different ways to build Pomegranate. You can either go with a cooldown, just so that you have full focus on that ability happening as much as it can, because if you can get the cooldown to the max point, you can get it to where the point where she refreshes the skill and keeps it going means that attack buff stays on the team the whole time. You don't have any delay of not having that attack increase. So that's something to consider as a potential build. But also, she has good HP at a base level, not so great attack or defense. And as you can see in runs I've even tried before too, her attack really just does not do a lot of damage. She is mostly focus of heals and of the attack bonus. So, the two things that you could do, and this is a little bit weird, but it's going to kind of be what I think will make the most sense. I think you can put a lot of focus into damage resistance, cooldown, and amplified buff. Here's why. The attack bonus does go on her as well. And then the amplified buff, the way that works is that any buff a cookie receives, they get an increased percentage of it. So for instance, if she gives herself, because she gives the whole squad a 30% attack increase, she gets that 30% increase, and she's got the maximum amplified buff, which would be a substat on like cooldown toppings. She would have a maximum of 10%. So that means that if she has, a 10% amplified buff with the 30% attack increase, then she's going to have a 33%, because it's 10% of the 30%. It's not 10 plus 30. I wish it was. That'd be great. But it's just 10% of the 30. So it's only a 3% buff. But she does also get healing too. So instead of 28.7%, she would have 31.2% healing over time. And you can kind of play with that with other cookies too, but really that's a hard one to invest in, because Amplify buff, you have to really be getting some amazing buffs for it to really be truly useful as a substat. And I'll cover more of that in the future, of course. But as you can see right now, I just have her built mostly as cooldown. She's got some defense on her, which took her up just a little bit. but it's really hard for that attack to raise. You can go for attack if you want. It's going to be tough. The attack on her is just very low, so don't expect her to be doing damage. You want to keep her alive. You want to either get some damage resistance, you want to get some defense if you need some like other partial substats. Either way, it's if you can keep her alive, since she's in the mid row now instead of the back row, then you have better chances to keep boosting your team, keep healing your team. So she's not perfect. I think she's definitely more viable now that they've made the adjustments, and she can still be better. But as far as like the recommendations that I think make most sense for her is either going to be the cooldown chocolates with those substats I already talked about, or if you're okay with her cooldown not being first and not being very fast, if you understand the skill priority video I covered at one point, you could go a solid almond route and then just specifically focus those 3 substats. Because you can either try to maximize one specific like effect, or you can have a base one and have all the 3 substats be something completely different. And this might be an instance where that cookie might need it. Maybe solid almonds to give you the 4.1% times 5, that's 21%. No, that's 20.5%. 20.5% damage resist. That's acceptable. That's pretty good. And then you can just focus on cooldown, amplify buff, and whichever the other one you want to put into. Because if you do more damage resist, great. You have more survivability, of course. But if you don't, maybe you go into attack. Maybe you try to raise that attack. Get about another 15%. That would be an interesting way to pull it. Or you could go cooldown. And if you go cooldown, your top end of it's going to be 15%. And then you can completely focus on damage resistance and the attack and maybe the HP or defense. Whichever you think may be best for the survivability of your cookie in the matches. And it does largely depend on what type of team you want to build. So I hope this information was helpful for you guys. If you guys have comments on what you think is a great build, what's really working well for you in the arena or the other game modes, I'd love to hear it in the comments. Thank you so much for stopping by, and you guys have a wonderful night.